Hi, everybody. This is Seychelle Vanpool, and we have Stephanie Sharp here. We both are on Vanpool Properties over at Keller Williams, and we are going to talk a little bit today about the Small Business Administration and the PPP that just got released this last week. And the reason why I wanted Stephanie on here is she actually is a former small business banker. And what I love about that is we have a huge diversity of team members and their professional backgrounds that we get to work with. And we have amazing resources then at our fingertips to not only help you with real estate, but like help you with business, right? And these are questions that we're looking at as small business owners as well. And so I figured we were wading through these waters of looking at all of these available options. Stephanie, it would be great to have you on and we can kind of have a little discussion for a couple minutes about what we're learning, what we're finding out, and keep in mind these things are changing on a daily basis. So there may be some tweaks or changes to this, but I think we're starting to get a pretty decent understanding of what's available. So Stephanie, I'm gonna pass the torch over to you and let's chat a little bit about what you're finding out and what you're seeing available that maybe some of our business owner friends or even fellow sole proprietors and 1099ers might be able to take advantage here.
Yeah, well, once again, I do appreciate having me on this talk program. I just wanted to, I just want to tell everybody really quick, there's so many different options out there, and there's a lot of words that are being thrown around. The CARES Act, SBA, Paycheck Protection Program, there's grants, there's all these different things. So just know that there are a lot of different options. Some of them are within the same bubble. Some of them are all around. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to let us know and we can kind of give clarification there. So the CARES Act, which is under the SBA, that stands for Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security. And what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to share my screen so you can look at what I'm looking at.
Yes, I'm visual, so that helps me a ton.
Yes, let's see, share my screen. It's going to be this guy. Okay. So I just want to kind of give you guys a visual. This is from the Chamber of Commerce. There's a lot of information out there as I'm looking through it from different small parties that might not have the best information just because, if, like Seychelle mentioned, it goes minute by minute of what is happening day by day. So if it was updated 3 days ago, it might not have the same information as what's going on now. So I wanted to bring this up. This one is from the Chamber of Commerce. So I feel like there's some pretty good information here, and we'll share this link with you as well. So the great thing about these emergency loans is that they kind of take away all of the stipulations that go into if you were just get a normal SBA loan any other time of the year. Normally it's a really super long process. You have to go through a bank and you have to have, they do kind of change their interest rates depending on what the bank's looking for. You have to have really strong personal guarantees. So you have to have, somebody who's willing to put everything on the line for this loan. You a lot of times have to have liens on your business assets, sometimes personal assets, depending on the strength of everything. So they've shifted away from that completely, just looking at trying to help you guys. So one of the things that they've done, which is awesome, they've allocated $350 billion. So to kind of give you, when you're looking at how many businesses are out there that are going to have need, that's how much money they have set aside for these acts. So as you're just thinking about how much can I borrow, remember that there's all the other businesses out there too that are all taking shares from that.
And so, answer this for me too, like what is the thought process behind deploying the money this way? Because typically you would go to the Small Business Administration website, right? Or directly to the SBA to apply for funds. You and I were talking before we hopped on, it sounds like that you're going direct to banks on this, right? Instead of going directly. Why is it important that they're trying to deploy these funds this way? And what are they really trying to stimulate here? Like, what's the goal behind releasing these funds?
Yeah, well, behind releasing these funds is the entire point of the SBA is to retain jobs. So if you're looking at what the SBA's purpose is that their goal is to create jobs for the American people. And so by going out and outsourcing this way, they're able to touch more communities. They're able to definitely, the government doesn't have the same setup as banks do. They're used to making loans, going through the processing process, collecting, payments. So they're trying to outsource that as well. So they're reaching more people and utilizing those usages. So the SBA, the great thing about them, I've always appreciated, is that the real goal is to make people go out, try and live their dream, create their own jobs, and more importantly, employ people under them so that they can stimulate the economy that way.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's very, very neat. So so this is a really, really great program. I think the eligibility requirements are really easy for a lot of the people that we would be talking to. Generally, with all small businesses or any SBA loan, you're looking at somebody who has under 500 employees. The only exception here is that if you guys do have somebody who is a franchise owner, have them contact me directly. That's a little bit of a different scenario because franchises fall into different umbrellas that have more than 500 people. But if you're a franchise owner and only have 10, 15 employees, that can be a little bit different. So you're looking at small businesses with fewer than 500, charities, so 501c3s with fewer than 500. If you're an individual who is a sole proprietor, independent contractor, or is otherwise self-employed, which is a lot of the people that we're talking to and working with on a daily basis anyway. And the other ones, tribal business concerns or veteran organizations, those count as well. One of the things, and we talked a little bit about the franchising, so what are lenders going to be looking for? That's what a lot of people are like, well, do I even qualify? The great thing is on the right side, what lenders will not look for. Okay, this is something that is these usually apply. So they're not going to be checking, oh, did you go try at these other banks and they declined you? Oh, maybe not. They're not going to be looking at what your personal guarantee situation looks like. They're not going to be looking at how much collateral you have to put in. So I just want to emphasize that that's a huge deal for them. At a high level, they're just making everything's really subjective. So asking you in good faith, so making sure you're being honest. They want to make sure that what you're going to be using the money for is, like I mentioned before, to retain workers. The whole point of this is not to boost the top. It's to make sure that the top has the ability to retain the people at the, that are working underneath them. So I think that's something, as you're looking through this, number 2 says they're going to use the loan proceeds to retain workers, maintain payroll, and make sure the lights are on by paying the mortgage and the utilities.
So what happens if I take this money and then I let a bunch of my people go? Does that affect my ability to get some of this forgiven, I'm guessing?
It does, yeah, and we'll go over that because there's a section that talks about forgiveness. So yes, so the point is, if they give you the money and say, here, keep your people, and you don't, and you hold on to it for yourself, then when we talk about loan forgiveness, that's going to play a part in that too.
Okay.
Yes, so they also obviously just want to make sure that you haven't applied for emergency funding somewhere else and have already gotten it, and now you're looking to get the same amount of funding here. So they always, just want to make sure that you're not looking both ways. As an independent contractor, really, you're just going to be bringing your payroll tax filings, your 1099, which you should have for 2019 anyway, and just making sure you have a high level knowledge of what your P&L will look like from just income and expenses. They do ask you on the application about your cost of goods sold. So see if you can have that kind of ready and available, because for some of us, that's not as black and white as it would be for others.
And depending on what business you're in, that might be different if you don't have actual stock of things,
right. If you're not keeping QuickBooks of everything that you're doing, which a lot of us sole proprietors don't, then you just kind of have to dig more into that. And so it's just something to keep on hand and ask around. There's also a lot of resources online for, depending on what your industry is, of saying what really counts as cost of goods sold. Because the definition of that, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, the definition of cost of goods sold is what is the actual cost of making those dollars come in. So typically, if we were selling a widget, what materials and labor went into specifically that widget? But when we're doing a service,
that's a little bit trickier, right?
A little bit more black, and not nearly as black and white. So just make sure you're looking at that for your individual areas to see if you can kind of get more information on that.
Awesome.
So so that's, high level, they're not looking for trying to get certain debt service coverages or anything like that, as much as right now it's like all hands on deck. Are you going to use this money for good? Great. Then let's move forward.
Let's deploy. Got it.
Yes. So one of the things too is people are going to say, well, am I looking for $1,500? Am I looking for $10,000? Am I looking for $100,000? One of the things, and this goes for at the top it talks about it, this is for the 500 and under businesses, not necessarily your sole proprietor. So you have one of two options, either 10 million or the least of which, either 10 million or 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost.
Got it.
So if you're looking at all of your employees, take what your monthly is, multiply that times 2.5, and you'll kind of get a gauge of what it is that you think your max could be.
Okay.
So it'll tell you a little bit, what does that look like? So obviously, what you pay for leaves and different tips that people can get, retirement benefits, all those kinds of things.
Okay, that makes sense.
And let's see, what's excluded in the payroll cost. When you're looking at sole proprietors, this is a little bit different. Sole proprietors, you're going to be no more than $100,000.
Okay.
So anything over that, that's going to be excluded.
Got it. So if I'm a sole proprietor and I made $200,000 last year, I can qualify for up to $100,000 in payroll, but that second 100 of the 200 would not qualify. Okay.
Correct. So they're only allocating $100,000 for our sole proprietors, based on what you made in 2019. So, but what is not included in that is all the taxes that go along with your personal payroll taxes or payroll costs that come with that.
Got it.
So, and obviously, if you live outside of the United States, that's going to be more sticky too, because the purpose again, let's keep it, let's keep it local. Okay, so then
jobs in the United States.
Yes, that is the purpose. So talk about forgiveness. I think that's kind of goes into what you asked about before. This is also a very new thing. So this is, as of last week, I don't know if you guys have much knowledge of government-backed loans. They don't forgive them typically. So this is new territory for all of us that know this space. So they are eligible for the, it gets kind of tricky. So for the first 8 weeks after you originate the loan, you can be forgiven for all of these different bullet points here that are in that 8-week period. So that's going to be, like we talked about before, payroll costs, interest on your mortgage to make sure that you're keeping your lights on, the rent, or if you pay rent to go there, and utilities. So you want to make sure you're not going to be forgiven for the entire amount of the loan, but those first 8 weeks of expenses, because that's how they're expecting are going to be our biggest economic impacts in the first 8 weeks, that they're making sure that they are that they can forgive that. So obviously that can't exceed the principal balance. It kind of goes without saying, but if you borrowed $30,000 and then you spent $50,000, they're only going to forgive that 30. So if you're looking at, so forgiveness can be reduced, and that's exactly what you were speaking about earlier. So the reduction in number of employees by more than 25% will mean, and I'll leave this here. I mean, this can get very wordy, but
we'll post this in the blog as well. So, with a link to it down below in the comments so that you can
yeah. So reduction based on, the reduction is based on the number of employees that you're able to keep. So this kind of gets a little bit hairier, but can show you if you take the payroll cost as a high number, and if you have to take away employees, you would go with this first option, which gives you a little more options there. You have, at the end of it, you have to, basically 3 options to go from. If you have to reduce in salaries, then it comes a little bit different that way. So that's the second option as well.
Got it.
So if you are able to bring employees back after everything is said and done, it said it will not reduce the amount of loan forgiveness if by June 30th the borrower eliminates the reduction in employees or reduction in wages. So if you get things back to normal before June 30th, then you're good for the forgiveness.
Great. So if someone wants to apply for this, because this to me seems like a really valuable thing that I know any small business owner, we have a lot here locally, would want to apply for. What's the best way for them to go to apply for this program?
Yeah, I would say, like we spoke about earlier, I would definitely go to the website first.
And what is that? The SBA?
SBA.gov has done a really, really great job of really streamlining the process. So again, I put myself through it really quickly a couple minutes ago just to see how that process went, and it was really quick. All you just need is, like I mentioned before, just especially if you're an independent contractor, what's your high level 1099 and high level expenses and operation costs that way. So that is, I think, something that you would start number one there. Okay. If you get through the process, maybe I'm not, see, again, we're it's all kind of new territory.
Right. I mean, this is all changing. So we're not going to like hold you to this
Right.
specifically because A, you can't enforce it, and B, the government might change it. So
Correct.
it's subject to being changed. But as we know it today, if you go to the SBA.gov website
Mm-hmm.
to apply, that's
Mm-hmm.
the best first step. And then what are some other options available, or what are some other things in addition to this that might be interesting to look at?
So I mentioned before at the very beginning, people have a lot of questions on unemployment. That is a little bit of a different space than what I'm used to, and that is also changing all the time, and it's also state by state. So if we have people who are looking at this and they are in different states in Texas, it's going to be different as well. So I would encourage you guys to do a little bit of background research on unemployment and what that would look like. They have lifted a lot, surprising to me, they've lifted a lot of the regulations that typically went with unemployment, which meant, you had to be let go by a company, for certain specific reasons. But now you can even be a sole proprietor and apply for that as well. The other thing, which I haven't seen this come to fruition, so no guarantees, but I figure why not, throw your hat in the ring, is there is one for a $10,000 grant from the SBA.
Interesting.
Yes, so for sole proprietors, if you have a 1099, again, what you need is your 1099 form and just a high level, like we talked about the cost of goods sold, have that information on hand. But if you go that route, I haven't seen it come to fruition, or
Sure.
like the SBA website.
Coming soon, right?
Yeah, I know it's legitimate. It's just a matter of how many are they, and they said it's on a first come, first served basis. So, we're just trying to figure that out. So I would definitely look at that route too. You probably should be able to do the SBA loan like we talked about in detail earlier, and the grant at the same time.
Interesting. And what's interesting about that is you mentioned first come, first serve. So applying for this as a business owner or sole proprietor or 1099 sooner rather than later is definitely going to be the goal.
Yeah. And I don't think with the loans, I don't know if they're going to, who knows in the world what's going to happen, but I don't think there's going to be a like, oh, whoops, we told you we had 360 billion and we're out. I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah.
But definitely it never hurts to do this sooner rather than later. And so if you want to go to banks too, to go on that, if you're not getting the response you're looking for through the SBA, specifically for the loans, I would team up. I've heard, because this just went in, so this is Tuesday, last Friday is when all this came into action. And so every banker that I've talked to since then kind of has their hair on fire, because all of their current clients and customers are going through trying to completely change their risk rating, changing their portfolio, doing interest only, doing payment deferments, all of those things. Sure. So everyone's still trying to figure it out. So if you go talk to a bank, they want to help you. It's just a matter of they're trying to figure this all out as well, because like I mentioned, this is a 180 completely. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds to me like relationships matter. That's something that we always value in our business too, which is if you have a business banker that you have a trusted relationship with, now would be the time to pick up the phone and give them a call and ask some of these questions, because as the funds start rolling out and start getting administered, those banks are going to have individual ways in which each of them, whether it's Chase or Wells or Citi or B of A or a local community bank, et cetera, those are all going to administer the funds a little bit differently. So if you have a place that your bank or that your business is banking, it's really good to get in relationship and have those questions answered as well.
Yes.
One other thing, Stephanie, you and I were talking about is if you are thinking that you need to skip a mortgage payment, don't just skip it. Call the bank first before you do anything, or call the mortgage company or your landlord before you just start skipping payments and work out a payment plan. A lot of the mortgage companies are willing to add your payment, or landlords are willing to add your missed payments to the end of your lease, where your lease just elongates or your mortgage just elongates out for the payments you're missing. But we've actually heard of a couple landlords and some mortgage companies that are actually saying, let's say you miss 60 days worth of mortgage payments or rent payments. On day 61, they're expecting you to make up all of it. Right then. Right. And so just make sure you know what you're getting into before you start making assumptions, because we want to make sure that we're helping you guys be safe and make smart business decisions and be better business owners so that you've got what you need.
And my overall message about all of this, all these, particulars are important. But my overall message to you is create relationships with bankers at this time. This is the time to create those relationships that are going to stick with you for a long time. So if you find community banks, I'm always a big supporter of community banks. They pour a lot into our community, and I think
and they live in our communities too, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're ones, and the bigger banks are going to have a little bit harder time with this because they're all over the board in terms of what they do, whereas community banks are a little more specific and they know your area and know exactly what you're looking for. So
Smart.
start asking people for help, and because everyone's trying to figure this out. We're all in this sea of information, and like trying to figure out what is important and what isn't important is just really difficult. And so reach out to anybody that you know, reach out to us. We can have connections there too. And talk to your landlord, talk to your current banks before you get in a situation to where you're putting yourself in financial danger.
Right.
Everybody understands what's going on. That goes in the real estate, that goes in everything that we're talking about. Everybody's in this together. And so if you can just make sure that you're communicating is the big key here, that you're in trouble, and everyone's going to do what they can in their power to help you versus putting yourself in a bad situation.
Totally agree with you. And, you know, I'm really thankful that at least we all get to be in this boat together. So, Stephanie, if it's okay, you and I might do another one or two of these as everything starts unfolding and we start getting more information. So we'll come back and do a follow-up in the coming days as we get more information. But I think this gives everybody a really good start, including myself, a really good start on where we can go to start looking at assistance and making sure we know what our options are available before we're jumping in and making decisions. So
absolutely. Make sure everybody, just make sure you're going to SBA.gov. They've done a really good job of streamlining everything and giving you a lot of information right there. So if I missed anything here that you had questions about too, that's probably on the website.
Awesome. And if you can't get it there, feel free to reach out to us. And if we don't know the answer, we'll find somebody who does.
That's what we do.
That's right. That's in addition to real estate.
Yes.
We're excellent answer finders. So
yes.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being so willing to share. And hopefully this helps some of you guys too. Y'all have an awesome day.